Upgrades.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another JVS movie review brought to you from the Toronto Film Festival. This is one of the most emotional films I saw at this festival, or at least one of the films that brought the most emotion out of me in this film festival. And this one is called Weed Grown Now. And this is directed by Minhal Baig. And here is the quick synopsis. Two young boys, best friends, Malik and Eric, discover the joys and hardship of growing up in a sprawling Cabrini-Green projects in 1992 Chicago. And here's the cast. Blake James is Malik. Jen Rodriguez is Eric. Little Rel plays Jason, who's Eric's dad. And Journey Smollett plays Malik's mother, Dolores. The best way to frame this movie of these kids just living their life in this housing projects, and just the way kids aren't necessarily aware of their surroundings and aware of the situation that they're in. They just enjoy life as it is. This film feels so big while you're watching it, because you're watching this film through the eyes of Malik and Eric. As the film first starts off with them playing this game called jumping, which is just taking mattresses from abandoned apartments, putting them in the playground, and you jump and then fall on a mattress. But the way the shots of them jumping is framed, it makes it look like they're jumping to the moon. And then the camera pans out and you see they're barely jumping 2 feet. But it shows you the close-up shot of them jumping because that's what kids see. That's the enjoyment they have. As we progress the story of just Eric and Malik and the joy that they have when they're together, the joy of the projects, and them not fully understanding their environment that they're in, it's great. That element immediately brought me back to my childhood and me growing up in the same type of situation and me not understanding anything about it. But as a kid, I just saw joy and wonder in everything. And that's what you get early on from Malik and Eric. And then a tragedy happens in their neighborhood. And then that helps frame what the film is really about. As we get to see Journey, who plays Malik's mom, and her struggling to keep her family afloat while also understanding they're not in the best neighborhood. Or as we get the character played by Little Rel, who is Eric's dad, and we see him just struggling to be a father that had recently lost his wife and raising these two kids and just wanting so much for his son and his daughter, but maybe not having necessarily tools, especially being in that neighborhood, of making it the best environment from them. But throughout the entire film, it's really about Malik and Eric as they explore the city and their projects. It's a scene where they're just sitting on 2 discarded mattresses in another abandoned apartment, and they're looking up at the ceiling, and the ceiling has cracks. And Malik tells Eric, if you look hard enough at it, it becomes like stars that you see. It's the wonder of being kids. It's the wonder of finding everything humanly possible to be excited about. And that's it. It just makes this film so powerful when you see it through the eyes of these kids and the little wonders of the world that they see when they're doing anything is amazing here. The 2 kids here played by Blake and Jen, and I hope I'm saying his name right because the pronunciation is Italian in nature, but American can change it at times. But of Blake and Jen as these 2 young kids who are just going about life. They give really good performances here, though, because you truly feel like you're living their life. And that's what the director here does an amazing job of, is it automatically makes the audience feel like you're living their life as you're watching everything that they go through. It is some of the most powerful work humanly possible, especially for people who may have grown up in these housing project environments. And you get to being an adult and you look back at it now and you realize, oh my God, that's me. Like, that's my childhood. These are the way I experienced things that looking back now as an adult, I understand that these aren't the best positive things to have had experienced. But as a kid, I didn't know any better. I just knew I was having fun. And I love the counterbalance they do between the parents realizing the neighborhood and the situation that they have their children in versus the children who just see everything in or through the best eyes humanly possible. Even down to it's one point of this film where Eric and Malik are in class watching a nature documentary on television that the teacher puts on, which anyone who's been a kid in these neighborhoods, we all remember the big cart when the teacher used to roll that out and you thinking it's movie day, and then they put on a movie that is nothing like what you want to watch, and you just like, I need to get out of here. And we get them getting out of there, and we get them going to the art museum in Chicago. And we get them seeing the wonder of the art museum, seeing the wonder of the people, but not understanding that because they left that school and didn't come home immediately afterwards, they didn't understand the worry and the desperation they put their parents behind. And it's an amazing scene between Blake and Journey as she's explaining to him, like, I can't protect you if I don't know where you're at. It is the number one fear of parents who grew up in these situations, in the projects. I remember getting that same exact speech as a kid. And it hit so many emotional triggers to hear her say this, because it's a moment where a parent has to be honest with the kid about the situation that we're in. And that if I don't know where you're at, I can't save you. It's a crushing thing because we see how it affects Malik as Dolores is saying this, but we also see how it affects Dolores to have to admit that we're in a situation where I can't protect you. It's just a powerful film, but it's a powerful, touching film. It never feels like it's too deep. It never feels like it ventures off into an area where it's just talking at you. It never feels like you should feel sorry for these kids either. It's just you're watching your childhood again through the eyes of these two young actors. And as emotional as I got watching this film, some of the emotion had to do with the joy I remember as a kid and living in this environment and the community that comes along with this environment. Being able just to go to your neighbor's house, or your mom invite your neighbor over because you're eating here, or where it feels just like a neighborhood environment, but also at the same time, it focuses on the violence of these situations also. As Malik's grandmother also lives with them, and she pinpoints like the neighborhood is getting dangerous because it wasn't like this when we moved here, which is the case of most projects, that eventually that turn and that shift happens and it becomes an extremely dangerous place to be, when that was not the initial way it was with those neighborhoods. It's just about the way everything changed for Black folks in the 80s and the 90s that made these places more dangerous to live, especially between the drug environment, between the police corruption and housing corruption that really didn't care about making affordable housing sustainable for Black people. And that is also an element of this story, and it really works well. And I think it's just a story that's going to resonate with people who grew up in these environments, but also hopefully put an eye on people who didn't, to understand like this is the way projects operate now, unfortunately. And how can we make this better? But how can we also celebrate that at one point these were great places for people to live? But through the eyes of Malik and Eric in this film, it's just so much joy, even through all the bad things that happen. These kids never lose their joy in this film, because that's what's the innocence of childhood, is not understanding the situation you're living in, but thriving in it because you're in it. It's a difficult parallel for people who are not from this environment to fully understand, but it's something that on screen the director does an amazing job of pinpointing that to the audience. And hopefully when you see it, you'll feel the same way I did. But we grown now, both of you from the Toronto Film Festival, out of a possible 10. I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. Again, I did not have a movie that affected me this much in this festival. And it didn't just affect me. It was multiple audience, multiple critics in our screening that were just in shambles after this movie was over, because it just brought back and invoked those memories of your childhood, of having your best friend. And again, just not understanding the situation that you're in, but respecting everyone still in it. It's a hard parallel to explain to people who did not grow up in projects. But for people who did, or people who know about the projects, you understand the sentiment behind this film and why this type of film is important to show people. And hopefully it will help correct that in current projects, that people understand that you need to respect where you live at as much as the people who own the property need to respect the residents where they live at. And this does a beautiful job of pinpointing the problems, but also showing the childhood joy of these situations. But this has been another JVS movie review brought to you from the Toronto Film Festival. Peace, people.